Hello and welcome to the 2024 Weapons for Wellness event. My name is Iman Blow, and I'm the founder of the Aspire to Inspire initiative, a former award-winning student athlete and producer of this experience in partnership with USA Fencing. Weapons for Wellness is a proactive mental health event created for the community with the purpose of mental health awareness, community engagement, and enrichment. As we are in an Olympic year, it seemed only right to center this year's discussion around the Olympic journey. This event consists of 3 interviews with current members of the Olympic movement representing different perspectives on Olympic qualification, the Olympic Games, and the post-Olympic experience. In this interview, we will have the pleasure of speaking to Aki Spencer Au about the experience of being an Olympian turned Olympic coach. Welcome, Aki.
Thank you.
And let's learn more about Aki. Aki is an Olympic fencer, as I said, and coach, born and raised in Harlem, New York City. His career as a saber fencer began at the age of 13 when he started training at the Peter Westbrook Foundation. In less than 8 years, Aki dominated the national and international circuits with multiple national titles, a junior world #1 ranking, and multiple team qualifications, and ultimately a ticket to the 2000 Sydney Games as a member of Team USA. After his Olympic debut, Aki decided that he wanted to transition into a new role in the fencing community and began training to become a coach. His career as a coach has been equally, if not more impressive than his journey as an athlete. Aki currently is an Ivy League coach and the first African American national team coach. He has trained Ivy League, NCAA, national, world, and Olympic champions and medalists. After an unprecedented season, he is preparing the men's saber Olympic team for the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris, France, where he will add another accomplishment to his belt as an Olympic team coach. Today, he continues to balance coaching the national team with his youth club students and college athletes while raising his 4 kids with his wife in New Jersey. That's a lot. That's a lot of good stuff.
Pretty
We're gonna
much sums it up.
we're gonna try to get some information from you with all this experience and this wide range of experience that you have. But first, we're gonna go into like our holistic introductory question, which
Mm.
is what was your introduction to mental health and what was your introduction to mental hygiene? For those who don't know, mental hygiene is the practice of protecting your mind, protecting your health, your mental health from outside obstacles or inside obstacles. Whereas mental health might be considered as, negative mental experiences. It's normally associated with that. So kind of what was your general mental health introduction, and then what was your introduction to proactive or active measurements to protect your mental health?
It's interesting you asked that question because I had no interest in mental health when I was an athlete. And the reason why was because I just didn't know anything about it. And, no one ever told me about it. And so I went on competing and traveling and training, just not knowing anything about mental health and not being aware that it could hurt or help my performance in any way. I it didn't really hit me until I feel like every athlete hits this I don't want to say a wall, but it hits this time where they're just unsure about things, unsure about if they're, I don't know, it could be something like if they're not training right, unsure about if they're actually good, unsure about all the things of that nature. For me personally, it didn't hit me until I just had a rough season one time, and I remember, and in that season, all these doubts started to filter in my head. A lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of self-doubt, self-worth almost. You know what I mean? And I really didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was or how to deal with it. Until I started talking to people and kind of reading up on things and you know, and then and then I found someone who kind of helped me through it. That gave me some techniques on how to overcome those things. You know what I mean? So, I just think that that is something that's overlooked. If you're not looking for it, how would you even know what to look for? And that's the kind of problem that I ran into. Um, so to overcome it, I mean, who said I overcame it, but to help through the process. Well, there was a lot of techniques that I went through, such as kind of
So
remembering. I'm sorry.
I want to get to that later, but
Oh,
you're
okay.
saying that some athletes have talked about being very successful when they were younger, and so they didn't have any like obstacles. Fencing maybe
Right.
came easy to them, or they were able to work hard, and then that directly correlated to their performances. And then it wasn't until things weren't directly correlating that they understood that there might be another component to it, or the mental
Right.
health part or the mindset part started depreciating.
Hmm.
Instead of being really confident, other things came in, and then they're like, hey, I have to address this too to be able to continue as an athlete. But to get more into those strategies, I want to go back to, your Olympic Games.
Mm.
Your qualification route was through what I like to call the Super Qualifier. It's my favorite tournament. And to provide background, Aki qualified during an Olympic year where there was no USA men's saber team, so we weren't allowed to send three fencers. Although he did not qualify through the regular Olympic qualification period, there was still hope. He had secured a spot in the Regional Olympic Qualifier, which is a winner take all style tournament, with the prize being the last Olympic qualification spots, as there are four qualifiers, one for each global region. And Aki succeeded in winning that tournament, which ultimately punched his ticket for Australia in 2000. Aki, when you look back on that season and what you're about to get into too, when you started going through those tumultuous times and then you reached out to people, what was your mindset going into that season? How did you mentally prepare yourself? What were the skills that you practiced, the strategies that you used, before and during that qualification event and
Mm.
ultimately during the games?
Well, it was funny. I came up with this one on my own, and I'll tell you what it was. I throughout the season, even at the start of the season, I prepared my mind not to qualify. So I prepared my mind not to qualify. So I would tell myself, if I don't qualify, it's okay. Now it's interesting. Like you can't really tell yourself that and be okay with it, right? But I really generally had to be real with myself and say, hey, listen, there are you know hundreds of people trying to qualify for these spots. The likelihood of me qualifying is very low, right? But I'm going to try my best to do it. And I told myself that um, even if it didn't work out for me, I knew that I would be okay with it because I would have known at the end of the day that I put everything I had into it. And for me, carrying that mindset lifted a lot of the weight off of my shoulders. I'm not saying that I was completely, driven and wasn't afraid, because of course I was scared. And what was the fear? The fear was not qualifying. But I felt like it was a lot of weight lifted off my shoulder carrying that fear. So it made the competitions a lot more manageable, mentally, than unmanageable. I saw a lot of my peers freak out, and I see it all the time, and it's hard to watch, even now as a coach. When I was competitive, it was kind of easy because I wanted to qualify with them, but but so I think that that was what helped me through the whole process.
So I kind of want to highlight something about what you're talking about. It's
Mm.
like one of the strategies that you implemented was if I don't make it, it's okay, which allowed you to free yourself to fence and to try your hardest instead of protecting yourself from that fear because
Right,
you accepted it as a possible reality versus saying, I don't care if I win or lose. It was more so that I could lose and that's going to allow me to fully try to succeed, right?
correct, correct.
And as you know too, during the Olympic season, a lot of top athletes, the results get really up and down because a lot of people have this increased fear or pressure of making an Olympic team, even though for most countries it's the same exact qualification process for every other year. But that fear comes in, it can really affect performance.
Right. Also, I want to deep dive into this a little bit more because one thing that I know about me is I came from, a rough beginning. When I say that, I mean like I was never the top in anything in my class or the top in anything in the things that I did. I was okay. I would say average, maybe in some cases below average. So, you know, for me, just to be on the journey to even compete with the best was definitely a win in itself for me. So just to tell people, hey, listen, I am trying to qualify for something. You know what I mean? It was just a win in itself. And also, little small little accomplishments along the way. Like I wouldn't say small. To me, they're huge. I'm talking like winning a national competition.
Hmm.
Not even a national championship, just a national competition and something, being number one at something,
Hmm.
just humbled me, be able to just go along with the ride and know that I'm competing with the best at something, so that was another part of it too.
Yeah, I think what you're pointing to as well is some athletes discount anything except for their next biggest goal, but you were able to actually have appreciation and hold value for the steps you took along the way, and they weren't just steps that you then, didn't matter anymore because you had another one you were looking forward to. They were
Right.
things that empowered and supported you to continue going
And I
and
use
give you
that
that
to this day.
confidence.
Exactly. And that,
Um,
that carries with me to this day with everything I do.
I want to go back to you as a fencer in the 90s. So you were undoubtedly one of few black athletes competing in the United States and around the world. And then when you transitioned to coaching in the early 2000s, you became a part of an even smaller percentage of black fencing coaches. And recently in 2022, you became the first black or African American national team coach. How would you say your racial identity or your background has contributed to any opportunities or obstacles that you have faced in the fencing community? And were there different obstacles as a fencer versus a coach? And finally, what, if any, were some of the hurdles that you have to face in your position of leadership now?
Mm. So I would say, I mean, there were obstacles. I would say most of the obstacles were with me, I guess, and me believing in myself and believing that I can be amongst all the other coaches, not just an American coach, not just an African American coach, but um, just the coach in general. So that's a hurdle for me. I mean, there were times where I felt like, you know, I was looked down upon for sure. I guess that would be an obstacle. And this again, this is just the feeling that I had, just the situation, going to these tournaments, going with a student of mine. Her name was Ibtihad Muhammad. You know, being a woman of Muslim faith, and people looking down upon her, and I felt a lot of the um the calls sometimes were a little questionable. The looks that we got were a little questionable. Um, but at the end of the day, it's you never really know, but you kind of feel it. So I would say yes, there were obstacles. I don't even want to dance around it. There were definitely obstacles. Um, but you know, I believe in what I do, and I believe that when you hold yourself high or too high a standard, that things will work out in the end of the day.
And I think something else I want to shout out, I've done interviews in the past with like Greg Marcialis, Alexander Marcialis, and Doris Willett, and talking about how when in that situation when Asian American athletes, multiracial athletes started to do better in the United States, then you had more fencers join the community who were of Asian American descent, and
Mhm.
then you have American fencers who get better, and then they garner more respect and representation in the community. And so I guess
Mhm.
possibly with you now in this leadership position and also with the success the team is having, that might also give way to having other American, other Black, other, coaches have less hurdles or less maybe prejudices and discrimination against them.
Mm. I agree.
Um, Talking about, Ibtihaj and the Olympics, post the 2000 games, you made that transition. And then 16 years later, you qualified your first athlete for the Olympic Games in 2016, Ibtihaj Muhammad, followed by two more athletes for the 2020 Olympic Games, Khalil Thompson and Daryl Homer. You were speaking on it a little bit. You started to speak on it, but the question is, what is the biggest difference between how you approach fencing as an athlete versus a coach? How did you mentally prepare for the qualification seasons and the games themselves as a coach? And then, what was your experience participating in the Olympics like as a coach?
So I guess I'd answer, if I remember correctly, the difference between trying to qualify for the Olympic Games as a coach than as an athlete. Is that one of the questions? Okay,
Yeah,
so
just I guess like the general vibe is with the Olympics, what is the difference between you being someone on that path versus you supporting someone on that path? And then how did you prepare your athletes for that
mm.
path that you'd already taken?
Well, I'd say it's a huge difference because one, it's just me and I can talk to myself, mental conversations with myself. When I'm dealing with another person, because everyone's different, right? Everyone has their own mindset. Everyone has their own way of looking at things. First I have to have that trust where I can kind of have my athlete look at things the way I look at them, and I have to see the way they look at them as well, so that we have that trust and at least we're on that same fine line. Second, I have to be able to convince my athlete that they're just as good as everyone else, if not better, and to have them keep that confidence up because there are times when you're trying to qualify for the big games where you kind of lose that confidence. You don't think you're as good as everybody. I know how it feels. The thing is, I know how it feels, and I think that's one of the edge. That's an edge that I have over coaches who've never competed in that arena before, because I know how it feels and I know what it's like to kind of doubt yourself, and everyone has it. No exceptions. You know what I mean? And I kind of know what it's like to what mental things you can go through to kind of get your way out of that hole, you know. But the main thing for me is to have that trust from the other person to receive it and to understand that this is just a process and it's just this competition. Doesn't mean like the next four competitions are gonna be like this one. You know what I mean? Because we all think that sometimes, like, oh my God, my first competition, I didn't even want to bout. Let's say I went out in the first round. I'm like, is the whole season gonna be like this? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, it's that negativity, all that stuff. It's so powerful, and it could really steer you in a different direction than you're willing to go. But I think that for me, I'm able to understand it and have my athlete understand it and able to work with them through it, you know? And I think that's one of the things that separates me from other coaches who haven't gone through the qualifying path themselves.
Most definitely. And talking about athletes' resistance, particularly under stress, particularly during the Olympic trials, you could say something positive to them and then they don't believe you because they think you're just trying to appease them, or you
Right.
say something a little bit critical and then they maybe get defensive because they think that you're just, you don't understand. But, like you said, that trust between you and them, that you're actually doing what you think is best for them, that you're being honest with them, and like when they're not confident in their performance, when they're not confident what they can do, that you're giving them an honest reflection of like how you see them as a coach and the potential you think they have.
Right. Right. And it is and it doesn't really it also carries over into competition. Like there was this girl, just just as a side note, just came back from a competition. There was a girl 16 years old. She was in a Division 1 competition and she took third. Now, no one expected her to take third. I wasn't surprised because I know what she can do, right? But doesn't matter what what I think she can do. But the most importantly, she had believed in herself, and so I helped her throughout the day believe in herself. And she went against, first of all, it was amazing that she even made a top 8. That was amazing. I would have accepted that, but she was able to believe during the next bout, where she won 15-14, by the way, that she could beat this girl who you know, was an Olympic hopeful at the time, who was very strong. And she was able to win the bout. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it carries over into everything, not just qualifying for the game. It could be that moment. It could be, you know, those 5 seconds of anything. Being able to get that little burst of confidence from someone else. It doesn't hurt to just to get a little from somebody else, because sometimes it's hard to to do it for yourself or get it on your own, you know.
I'm a big cheerer and I love cheering because I know it can give that little bit of
Oh
energy to
man,
someone who's
that
having
little bit, if you can just pull that
crisis.
2 touches out of somebody, it's worth
And
it.
it could change the whole bout. But That kind of connects into my next question. And I think something that you're talking about here is that there is a, gap between an athlete's skill level and then how much of that skill they're able to actually utilize during competition, which might end up with something like you said, where an athlete might be capable of winning a tournament, like they have the actual skill level to do it. However, you don't know necessarily where their confidence and efforts will meet those skills and then end up with their performance. So the question goes into this, you've coached at all levels and coach them simultaneously. You've seen and worked with athletes transition from local youth tournaments to national and international events, attend college and compete in NCAA competitions, and participate in Olympic qualifiers and the Olympic Games. So, as a coach, how do you provide mental support to your athletes in those various environments? And also, what is a mental skill or element of performing in competition that you believe distinguishes athletes who are able to grow and succeed in the later stages versus athletes who might have a hard time making those jumps up?
Hmm. Well, first I got to know the personality of my athletes. I have to know what kind of person they are. Some people are competitive, some people are not. You know what I mean? And not everybody, I can't use the same technique with everybody because everybody can't handle that. And what my job is to try to find what it is that a person has, what kind of abilities they have, mental strengths, mental weaknesses, and kind of work with that. Not everybody's meant to be a champion, but that's not to say that they can't be the best fencer they can be. Like not everybody's going to be NCAA champion or national champion. Um, so what I try to do is to get my athletes to understand that no matter where you are in this game, no matter what level you are, there's always more. There's always something else. There's always a level up that you can reach if you're willing to go there. You know what I mean? And so we those are the common mental games that I play with them, and it coincides with the actions that I do. Like for instance, you can be present, right? Or you can just kind of think about something. You know what I mean? So like in about present to me means you're going to execute this action, and I don't care what happens, it's going to be executed. That's to me, that's present. Thinking about it is like maybe I shouldn't because this might happen. Thinking about the whys and the whens and the hows, you know what I mean? And my thing is kill all of that, think about the action itself and be present. And I like to leave my students with the understanding that you execute something, either it's going to happen or it's not, right? It's going to happen or it's not. But the main thing is that you control it. You know what I mean? You're in control of it. It may not happen, it may happen, but what you don't want to do is get in a situation where you could have, should have, and never know you would have never known if it would have happened or not because you always left yourself with that variable. That makes sense. I don't know. It's hard for me to explain sometimes.
No, absolutely. I think just from my experience as an athlete, I was never upset when I fenced as, well as I could or tried as much as I can to win a bout. I was always upset when I, you know, tried to avoid losing and therefore
Mm,
didn't do my actions all the way out or
thank
didn't
you.
try things even though I know that this might work because I felt like it was risky. Those
Yes,
always felt like worse tournaments than
absolutely.
if I had lost and really tried to commit to my actions, whether
Mhm.
it landed me, victor at the end of the bout or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like this athletes that I work with now, we're on the side of the strip and trying to coach them. And I know they're in trouble when because to me, I like to be there. Like I give the advice. It's their job to either take it and execute it or take it and do whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I always got to understand that, always got to keep account that they're the ones in it and I'm not. You know what I mean? Like I'm in it, but they're in it. They feel it, they smell it, they can hear everything. They all these and all their senses. I'm an outsider giving them information from what I see from the outside. So, you know, um, when they turn to me and say, "But what if this?" When I hear stuff like that, then I'm at that point, okay, I think we're in trouble. So I always like to to kill all that noise and just have them practice, you know, this is what we're doing, or this is what I'm doing, and I don't care what happens after that. This is what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? And to me, the ones who compete like that are way less afraid, way less not I wouldn't say less nervous, but way more confident in what they're doing and what the outcome is going to be and what they need to do next. To me, a person who thinks like that is and practices that way, because this is how I practice, um, are more likely to execute the action at 14-14 or 4-4. They're the ones that are going to go for the touch. I remember a time where for me, I started getting better when I stopped becoming afraid to lose. That's when I started. Those are my best years. Just like you mentioned, in your case, when I stopped being afraid to lose, and when I started to make things better and get more results. What happens is, and again, psychologically, we think too far ahead, and we think about the outcome before the actual match is has begun. You know what I mean? And to me, that's a mistake. Thinking about the execution of action is way more important to me than thinking about maybe I might win, maybe I might lose. Everyone's good.
Yeah.
Everyone's good. You know
And
what I mean? So,
I think especially in Sabre, because you coach Sabre, there's really not a lot of time to dedicate energy and focus to too many things. And so
yeah,
even if you don't have the time to weigh the options really
right.
and be two steps forward because you have a couple seconds to really commit to something. And I think something you're also alluding to is the fact that half committing to an action is worse than fully committing to an action.
Mm,
Both can result in not getting the touch, but if you half commit to the action, you're very likely to not succeed, whether it's the right action or not, because you didn't either do the action full out or not do the action at all, which are kind of more decisive things than if you fully committed to an action and then it didn't work. At least you have concrete information there.
a whole bunch of information. And not only that, but you also, if you fully commit to an action, it wasn't the right action, you may still get it. You know what I mean?
because
Could be
of
the wrong
just
action.
because of the confidence, and the other person obviously is dealing with those same things,
Right.
whether or not they can really commit to a decision and be okay with what happens after.
Right.
My kind of final question for you are, what are some mental hygiene practices that you are currently incorporating into your life as a fencer, as a father, as a coach? And is there one piece of advice or encouragement you can give a younger fencer currently navigating mental obstacles that come with aspiring to large goals? What would that piece of advice be? So what do you do for yourself? And then what would you recommend, for someone who's trying to develop themselves as a performer?
I've learned over the years how to deal with uh, mental hygiene and just the mental aspect of everything, because I've learned um, throughout my competitive years, just the practice of doing it and the practice of competing, how to deal with it. I never now at this point in my life, I never look ahead and worry about what happens down the line. You know what I mean? I'm always chipping at it each day at a time. You know what I mean? Like if I'm like, for instance, I became a coach. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know how I was going to, who I was going to coach or where I'd be. All I knew is I had these dreams of being a coach, having students make an Olympic team, having students win world titles, national titles, you know. And I felt like for me, I had to think about, first of all, the path that it would take. What does that path look like for me? And I use all the techniques that I learned as an athlete to not be afraid to take risks, not be afraid to take chances, but rather every risk that you take, even if there's no reward there, there is another lesson to be learned. You know what I mean? And I use that today. So I constantly am, obviously there are times where I do feel that I'm all these negative things start coming in my head. Like I do feel that maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. You know what I mean? But then I realize, it's okay. Even if I am doing the wrong thing, it's okay. There's nothing wrong we're doing the wrong thing unless you as long as I stay on the right path and on the right line that I've been staying on for the last 20 years. You know what I mean? I can go out the line a little bit and try something different. You know what I mean? And who's to say it's wrong? You know what I mean? As long as I am, I know that it feels right, and I know that the outcomes are pretty much not similar, but always improving or always going forward. I know that I'll always be doing the right thing. And to me, putting myself in a good state of mind, even when it comes to my kid and raising a family, of because who's to say that even what I'm doing now is right, but when I look around and I see that I have healthy kids, that they're doing the right thing, they're involved in things, and they're happy, then I know that I'm doing something right. That I'm not, there's no manual of right or wrong, but you know, raising kids, having a bunch of kids that I'm trying to uh, create to be champions, young champions. In my mind, it's not about being champions, it's about being the best fencer that you can be. And how do we get to that? How do we get moving in that right direction?
I think an overarching theme in this interview for you is like committing to something that you honestly believe in and that you can put your faith and efforts into, and being okay if the outcome does not result in exactly what you would most like. And that in between those two, you still get the benefit of
Oh, for sure.
putting your efforts into something meaningful.
Right.
Even if it doesn't result in the exact thing that you want, you still got the process and the experience of really committing yourself to something, and you learn something from it either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, also, I have to mention, of course, so I've known Aki for probably almost 2 decades, and Aki was an incredible source of esteemed support for me. I fence foil, he's a saber coach. He's never directly coached me. Well, actually, he has coached me, but he's never provided me with like foil fencing skills. But I went to Columbia. He currently coaches at Columbia, and he definitely was an anchor for me when I was fluctuating in my confidence of, as a fencer, what I could do. So I personally experienced Aki's coaching and his ability to help stabilize and encourage his athletes from a mental standpoint. So I just
Wow.
wanted to put that out there. Love to say it.
I still remember, I play that back in my mind a lot. The day that you won the national championships, the NCAAs, that was amazing. It still is. I still think about it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
yes.
and the biggest thing for me is, a year before I had a major coach transition. It was like a crisis of training, and
Yeah.
Aki had showed up to one of my fencing tournaments where I didn't have a coach and just sat there and just tried to get me to believe that I could do something better. And a year later, he was able to sit with me during the finals at the championships. And I think that, support of just someone who did believe in my skills, even when, again, I had a hard time personally, did help me access that little bit of that extra bit of my skill, and to be able to commit to trying to succeed, even if I didn't win, like you were saying, that you do and that you try to help your athletes do.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, so thank you so much for speaking to me. I hope everyone who listened at least got a little bit out of Aki's story. He said a lot about his journey, and I wish you a ton of luck at the Olympic Games with
Yeah.
your Olympic team. Hopefully, we bring home a medal, but
We'll see.
hopefully, we just try as hard as we can, and whatever result
Absolutely.
we get is the result that we get.
That's what it's all about. Yep.